The Scarab God versus Ramos Dragon Engine. We have means of mana, and we also have a means of discarding that Noxious Gearhulk. Yeah, we'll keep that. We'll risk it. We can get into a pretty fast Scarab God. Yeah, we'll go for Sunken Hollow on turn 1, and then we can continue to hit our land drops from there. And then we can throw down a Mana Crypt on our opponent. We may well want to go for the Liliana before we go for the Scarab God, especially now that we're into Living Death. Yeah, why don't we... Well, there's nothing we can do now. I don't want 2 Ideas Unbound yet, because we do have to... we get to draw 3 cards, but we have to discard 3 cards at the beginning of the next end step. And I wish I'd drawn into that beforehand. Yeah, I think we just get into Liliana here. So we'll go for our Mana Crypt. And we do, of course, need 2 black. And we can start the self-mill process here, which is create a 2/2 black zombie and mill 2. Getting into Sidisi is pretty nice. And next turn we need to decide if we want to Ideas Unbound and get rid of the Noxious Gearhulk and the Lord of the Void, as well as another card from our hand. And then we can start aiming towards a Living Death. We lost the flip on our Mana Crypt trigger, but we can get a land drop in for the turn. Let's see what we mill here first of all. Okay, we get into Razaketh, so that is 2 means of tutoring thus far. Why don't we go for this Ideas Unbound and set up a really nice Living Death next turn. Yeah, we'll have to ditch the Ancient Tomb, Lord of the Void and Noxious Gearhulk, because I would like to keep hold of Victimize and Lightning Greaves. It's tempting to go for the Victimize right now, actually. Although we can't do that because I just played the Lightning Greaves. So in that case, we will go in at our opponent with a 2/2 zombie and go over the Scarab God. Actually, we need to discard before we do any of that. Get rid of those. And now we will go over the Scarab God, a 5/5 for 5 mana. For 4 mana, it can exile a creature from any graveyard and create a token copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. When it dies, we return it to our hand at the beginning of the next end step, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we can scry X, where X is the number of zombies we control, and our opponent loses X as well. See if we get bolted again. We don't. And Bloodghast is nice. That means that I will be tempted to scry for a... not scry, we'd tutor for a Skull Clamp. This thing is destroy all non-zombies. Yeah, we can just carry on milling with that. We're about to get down our Living Death. No, we don't want to swing in with the zombies first because we're going to aim at swinging in with something bigger first. Our opponent, of course, doesn't have anything in the graveyard because it's only turn 5, and Ramos Dragon Engine doesn't typically work out of the graveyard. A flying 4/4, and yeah. The Scarab God versus Thraximundar. We have no land, so that is an easy mulligan. Easy decision to make there. And that is a tap land into a Jewel and a Mesmeric Orb. We can keep that and hope that we get into... and a land on top is fine as well. Yeah, with Skull Clamp in hand and the Recurring Nightmare, we need to hope that we get into Bloodghast. Bloodghast is the only reason, or the only reason that Bloodghast is in the deck is because of these 2 cards. It can work wonders, especially alongside fetches. We're going to go for our Underground Sea here so we can get Mesmeric Orb down, and that'll get some really good self-mill on the go for us. And then we will pass over to our opponent and we will go over the commanders. The Scarab God is a 5/5 for 5 mana. Whenever it dies, it returns to our hand at the beginning of the next end step. And at the beginning of our upkeep, each opponent loses X life and we scry X, where X is the number of zombies we control. And then for 4, we can exile a creature from a graveyard and create a copy of it, except it is a black 4/4 zombie. And we get some mill, and would you look at that, Bloodghast. That is really, really good. So that means we go in for our Skull Clamp. And then we go Misty Rainforest. I don't know if the always yes works on this. Oh, okay, and our opponent sees that and they don't like it. There's nothing to say that we were going to draw into anything too fantastic, but maybe they don't run exile effects and things like that, so yeah, early scoop from our opponent, but I'll splice this in somewhere else. The Scarab God versus Ramos Dragon Engine. That is a pretty good, well, yeah, Lindell's Vault might help us in this one. We have Recurring Nightmare for if we get anything good into the graveyard, so we'll just go for Underground Sea and pass over to our opponent, and then during our opponent's second turn, we'll Lindell's Vault. And, or do we want to Lightning Greaves? I don't think we do. I think we would just rather Lindell's Vault. We'll get down Mana Crypt and go into Lightning Greaves. Worst case scenario, we just go into Wasteland next turn and go for Scarab God. I have to imagine we'll be able to get something good off the Lindell's Vault. This is an instant speed spell. Look at the top 5 cards of your library as many times as you choose. You may pay 1 life. Put those cards on the bottom of your library in any order, and then look at the top 5 cards of your library. Then shuffle your library and put the last card you looked at this way on top of it in any order. So it's a way of sorting out your next 5 draws, basically. That's exactly what we're going to go for now. See what we can hit off this. Yes, I do want to pay the life because I don't care about any of that stuff. Newsgraph Mob is quite nice. That's actually pretty good, so we'll put that on top. Now the problem is, what order do we do it in? We'll draw into Sheoldred, I think. Or Intuition. Yeah, we'll put that on there, and then Newsgraph Mob. Then Victimize, then Sheoldred, and I think we're just going to Intuition anyway, to be honest. Well, we can leave it a couple of turns. We can get into the Scarab God first, then Sheoldred. And once we have Sheoldred in hand, we can try and hard cast it. Well, let's go for the Scarab God first. Don't mind having it in play because our opponent only has 2 colourless mana. And we have Lightning Greaves, so we can at least give it some protection. Ramos is a colourless artifact commander, but it is something that you can make Wooburg with because you remove 5 +1/+1 counters from it to add Wooburg twice. And you can only do it once each turn. Whenever you cast a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each of that spell's colours. It's a 4/4 flyer. So, not sure what our opponent's going for. We do not get to scry or hurt our opponent at all because we don't have any zombies in play. And that is a lightning bolt for us. We'll go for the Cabal Coffers. And then we can Intuition. Yeah, we'll Intuition. We'll just do it now. I don't think our opponent's going to disrupt us at all. And because we have Recurring Nightmare in hand, I'm going to go for Bloodghast. And we can get that out of our graveyard every time we cast a spell. We'll go for Thraxios. And we'll also go for... Where are we? Where is the Eldrazi? It would help if I could remember what the thing was called. Not Void Winnower. It That Betrays. I can even see the artwork. Oh yeah, we'll go for that. And then our opponent chooses which one to give us. They should probably just give us something big, seeing as how we don't have the mana for it. And they can just hope that we don't have a means of discarding it, which we actually don't currently. Okay. The Scarab God versus Tatyova Benthic Druid, one of my favourite commanders of recent memory. We can keep that because we'll get into a Coalition Relic on turn 2, and then failing that we can Frantic Search and discard the Razaketh, and then that will hopefully draw us into some lands if we're not too lucky in the opening draw phases. Tatyova Benthic Druid is 5 mana in Simic for a 3/3, and whenever a land enters under your control, you gain a life and draw a card. They get into a tap land, which is fine with me. We get into our Coalition Relic, and we're not going to bother pretending to hold up things that only cost 1 mana. We'll just put the charge counter on it straight away. Our commander is self-mill reanimation strategy. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life and you scry X, where X is the zombies you control. It's a 5/5 for 5 mana, and for 4 mana, exile a card from a graveyard, creature card, and you get a token copy of it that's a 4/4 black zombie. And we will always yield to that, and we'll grab black. We do, of course, draw into an island, which is good. So that means we can go... do we just go into Liliana? Let's go for Frantic Search first. Make sure not to spend our black mana. We do get into another... Yeah, we get into another black source there, but we have to discard a couple of cards here, which is annoying. I think we actually just have to get rid of that swamp, unfortunately. So we'll go on this and then black, and we'll take 2 again. And we'll go for Liliana. They are F6'd, which is good. And then we get a zombie, we get a couple of self-mills. We can go in for a Plague Crafter, hopefully. Plague Crafter is, when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, and each player that can't discards a card. And Burnished Heart for our opponent is something I would consider mana draining, maybe. I am just going to leave it because we can Buried Alive next turn if we want to. Just hoping to get into another black source here, seeing as how we felt the need to discard the swamp. And we do get into another swamp, so that's really good. So we'll definitely play the swamp, and the middle ability on the Liliana. Return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a black zombie in addition to its other types. So I wonder if we just go into Razaketh while we still can, or we could just go into the Plague Crafter. I think I might just want to go into Plague Crafter here. Force our opponent to sack the Burnished Heart, and that effectively time walks our opponent. And okay, they having some real trouble getting games with Scarab God. The Scarab God versus Prime Speaker Zagana. And that opening hand is not great, but whenever I seem to get a good hand with this deck, people just seem to scoop really early. If we get into some kind of discard effect, we could make Living Death work for us. But that's a big if. And I'm actually going to try and keep a pretty bad hand because, like I say, if I keep some good hands, people just seem to be scooping really early tonight for some reason. So we'll get in for a tap land off the Flooded Strand at the end of our opponent's turn. And we'll go over the commanders really quickly. The Scarab God is a 5/5, it's 5 mana. And at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. 4 mana lets us reanimate a creature from a graveyard, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. And when it dies, we return it to our hand at the end step. We'll just quickly grab our Fetid Pools and then get on with our turn. And, well, that is exactly the type of thing that we wanted to get into. So let's see if our opponent has a 1 mana counter spell, such as Spell Pierce or Force Spike, something like that. And they might be thinking about it. Okay, we get into another land, which is good. So in a couple of turns, we'll be able to Living Death. So that card that we just played is draw 3 cards. At our end step, we have to discard 3 cards. And the 3 we discard, of course, are the 3 reanimation targets that we started the game with. And this way, we can go in for... I think we go in for Skull Clamp next turn. And then Living Death the turn after. And just hope that our opponent doesn't have means of countering our Living Death, which they may well do. Obviously, they're in blue and green. The Prime Speaker Zagana is 1/1 for 6 mana. It enters with a +1/+1 counter, where X is the greatest power amongst creatures that our opponent controls. And then it draws cards equal to its power. And Plaguecrafter is quite nice, but it is a useless card without any creatures on the field. I'm not sure how many counter spells we should expect with Prime Speaker Zagana. I run Prime Speaker Zagana and I only have a couple of counter spells in the deck because I just want to concentrate on getting big creatures out. Because she's not all that good unless you have big creatures on the field, but she may well want to just control the early game. I opted more for ramping in the early game as opposed to controlling the game itself with counter magic. But we'll soon find out. A Cryptghast might actually get a counter spell out of them. I'm going to try that. This is, potentially not what we'd want to do, but if they have counter magic, I would assume that they'd want to use it on a Cryptghast. They have a full grip of 7 and they haven't used anything yet. Alright, well they opt not to, so we'll get the clamp on there. And we'll just continue to assume that they have means of countering things. Okay, they go for Croson Grip, that at least gets that out of their hand. It would have been nice to keep Skull Clamp, but it's not actually doing anything for us yet. And it actually won't do anything for us for the rest of the game because I don't think we have a means of getting it out of there. Okay, and Wood Elves I assume takes them into a tropical island, which means they'll be holding up 2 blue. Or apparently not. Well, I am fine with that. That means that we definitely go for Living Death. We can Dimir Signet first. Let me just we can Dimir Signet first, so we'll go for that. And that is 2, 4, 5, and 6. So I think we can afford to extort here. Let me just make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yes, we can. And then we put black into that. Black, and that is 5 mana for a living death. We do of course lose our Cryptghast, but we get so much more in return. And now we have means of doing a whole heap of damage to our opponent. They might have something like a Curse of the Swine or something like that. Or is this Cyclonic Rift mana? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It certainly is. So that'd feel pretty bad to get those back into our hand, but we can at least cast some of them. This is 7. This is 8, and this is 6. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana available to us. And if there's one thing I've said, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. If a blue player needs Cyclonic Rift, then they have Cyclonic Rift. We do at least have Careful Study now that we can ditch some of these things with. If our opponent's going to Rift, they should do it in response to us attacking in. Because, yeah, they don't want to take damage from either Lord of the Void or the Mind Leech Mass. Return all creatures to their owner's hand. Okay, evacuation. Yeah, okay, that means that we go in for Careful Study. And that is draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards. We'll probably get rid of the Mind Leech Mass and the Lord of the Void. Or do we want to, because of Force of Will, we might actually just go Massacre Worm and Lord of the Void. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. And that will tap for 3 and 4. Yeah, unfortunately we can't get Thran Dynamo down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we'll just have to try a Scarab God here. And then we can start reanimating those things again. See if our opponent has a counter spell. And they do have a counter spell, but so do we. We do want to land our Scarab God. Now they have 2 cards in hand, and a Prime Speaker Zagana won't do anything for them. Just expand our library, because our graveyard even, because we do want to keep track of these things. Yeah, and this is the problem I keep running into. People just seem to not like reanimation and the Scarab God for some reason, and everyone's just scooping left, right, and centre. So I don't even know if I'm going to bother trying to get games for the Scarab God. I could waste my entire night doing this, and it will be to no avail, but hopefully I can use some of this footage to splice some kind of a video together, but it's not going well so far. I hope you at least got a little bit of something out of it, and that you can see how the deck kind of works. But failing that, I don't have to upload Scarab God videos again and put all this effort into it. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel, and I hope you enjoyed it.